Welcome back again. This is the Toothpickings webcast. I'm Brian. I blog as Toothpickings and I webcast from this undisclosed Studio V somewhere in the American heartland. And why am I doing that? Because I'm weathering out the current pandemic. And speaking of weather and illnesses, let's do a little thought experiment here. What do we do when tragedy befalls our community, whether it's in the form of epidemics or some other form of failure of the state or failure of crops or some other thing we cannot control? And I don't mean that thing where we all pull together and get through it. I mean that other thing we do. You know what I'm talking about, right? We blame somebody. Who do we blame? In our current times, we have our favorites. We will blame foreigners, especially if they're immigrants. We'll blame people who we thought should know better, you know, the intellectual elites. We say, well, you should have seen this coming and told us. We'll blame the kids, the youth of today, for some reason. We'll blame the entertainment industry sometimes, especially if it's a violence-related thing. We will blame, we love to blame politicians. We'll blame a politician for anything that goes wrong. We'll also blame corporations, and we will blame the media, quite frankly, if we can find a way to link them to something. Now, if you go back X hundred years, who were people blaming then? A lot of those same candidates would come up. They all took it on the chin as well, but I think you had some other entities that got the blame when something went wrong, and some of those were supernatural. And sometimes, like that distant politician or that distant media enterprise, it was some giant other like gods or a god. But other times it was much more familiar, something closer to us, something that lived or didn't live right in our community. And I'm talking about witches and vampires. Now, how do we distinguish witches and vampires? It shouldn't be too hard if you've grown up watching enough movies and consuming enough pop culture, right? Witches live on the fringes, tormenting society from somewhere on the fringe. They are outcasts. They're usually women. Vampires are some fallen noble living in a ruined castle, infiltrating society and then bringing it down from the inside. Not going to wake the dead if I say that doesn't quite hold up to what would have happened in the folkloric record, right? Because men were witches to a shocking degree. Quite a lot of men were accused of and murdered for being witches. Quite a lot of women were accused of and determined to be vampires after the fact and treated as such. Vampires and witches both also lived within the communities that they were supposedly operating in. They were not outsiders, by and large. In some cases, the vampire was an outsider, a traveler, but also, just as often, they happened to be someone from the village, someone from the community who had died and was coming back to harm those that he or she knew in life. So call that one 50-50. But to the largest degree, these were not some foreigner, some other. These were more familiar. Why am I bringing up vampires and witches? Well, I have this hypothesis I've been working for a while in my head, and I don't have anyone to correct me on it. Somewhere, I think there must be a scholar who is working on this, and I hope, once you hear what I'm going to try to throw down here, I hope someone will get in touch with me and tell me if I'm onto something or if I'm way off base, because I don't know. The hypothesis begins like this. As far as I can tell, looking back in the record, vampire panics and witch hunts happened for hundreds of years, but they never happened in the same place at the same time. Understand? There's no overlap. Vampire panics, witch hunts. Communities that were separated by time or by a geography, but never in the same place at the same time, right? Keep that in mind. Because then the question becomes, why? Why only a vampire panic or only a witch hunt? I don't accept that people only have one-track minds and they can only believe in one thing, one supernatural cause of their issues at a time. I mean, we have a Holy Trinity. We believe in all three of those things, some of us. We can watch Game of Thrones and Avengers on the same opening weekend. We can vote for the same party year in, year out and still say we believe in bipartisanship. So clearly we can have different ideas opposing each other in our heads at the same time and continue to operate. Why not witches and vampires at the same time? I have an idea. I wish there was a rigorous academic inquiry into this. I don't have one to fall back on. I don't have anything that I can bring to you and show you. So it's up to me to get very incautious here. I think the answer lies in the village elders. You know, those people who referee the Pinewood Derby or judge your casserole or have a garden that's better than yours. Those people. And I think they're the ones who determine whether or not there's a vampire panic or a witch hunt. And here's why I think that. When we laugh at the backwardsness of these old stories of people going around digging up graves and putting stakes through the hearts of corpses because they think they're a vampire, what we're really doing is we're laughing at the hysteria of mobs. And that's probably a good thing, net gain, because we can inform ourselves of that. We should be able to do that and look at ourselves and go like, do we ever do anything like that? And the answer is yes, we do. But at least we can learn a little something along the way. Some of us, anyway. I think the village elders of yesteryear learned it faster than others. They saw what had happened in the next village over or what had happened a few years back, and they said, when the mob decides that there are witches in their presence, they will murder people, torture them mercilessly, hang them, burn them at the stake. What if we redirected their energy towards some other supernatural being? Well, guess what? People already had a vague understanding of what vampires were. Vampires were something that came from the grave. Vampires were something that was already dead. So the elders could redirect the energy of the mob not towards living people in the village, but towards the graveyard where people were already dead. Now, it's kind of ugly, but you know what? It's still kind of a win. No one living is getting killed. I mean, you got exhumations and desecrations, and it's not pretty. It's probably a bit traumatic for the people who have to watch, especially the family members, but at least no one's getting murdered. I call that a net win. I'll take it, yeah. Are we today better than the mobs of the past? I think we operate very similarly. I think we have different information, different ways to gather and disseminate information. And in many ways, I think we have some advantages, but I think once an idea takes root, I think we operate in a very similar manner. Think about some of the crazy ideas that have gotten inside of people and groups over the years and just haven't broken free. Some are still with us. Saddam Hussein having weapons of mass destruction, vaccines causing autism, The Witcher is a good show. These are crazy fucking ideas, but somehow people still believe them and will die on that hill. It doesn't make sense to me, but that's what we live with. There's a hole in this line of thinking, and some of you may have already picked up on this, and it's that this idea of vampire panics and witch hunts not overlapping, as far as I can tell, is accurate, but it only pertains to Eastern Europe and the northeastern United States. It does not apply to sub-Saharan Africa, where belief in witches and vampires does overlap. And vampire panics are a very real thing that is still going on. It's crazy to me that in the 21st century this is still happening, but it is. And I hope to get some answers. When I first started Toothpickings, actually Toothpickings was a side project to something else vampire related, but when I first started that project, one of the germs of it was the fact that people were still being hunted and persecuted in parts of the world for being vampires. This shit was still going on. And that blew my mind. And I've wanted for a long time to be able to talk to someone about that. The guest I'm going to have on in the next episode of the Toothpickings webcast is going to be able to help address that. So what do you think? Am I on to something here, or am I just way outside the coffin? I really don't know. And if you do know, if you happen to be someone with a grant to study this kind of thing, let me know. Let's have a chat. The comments section right down below is a great place to start. And speaking of comment sections, this is the part of the video where I am supposed to ask you to like, comment, and subscribe, and I've not been doing that in these videos, and there's a very good reason for that. I don't want to. Simple as that. It's not that I don't want your engagement. I do. I am just the world's shittiest salesperson. I am undeath of a salesman. My Patreon is such a shit show. I don't even want to direct you to it, but I feel compelled to put the link in down below. I like doing this part. I like reading about vampires. I like writing about vampires. I like doing these interviews, but I just don't like doing the sales. So if you feel compelled to like, subscribe, and comment, thank you. Thank you. I'm honored. I respond to as many comments as I can, but I'm not going to hold it against you if you don't. There's no hard feelings. But I do have one sales pitch, and it's this. As I'm recording this right here, there are states and communities that are not only opening up, but they're encouraging citizens to go out and engage in commerce and community events. And I'm not going to tell you what to do with your life, but I know you want a haircut, but your last one wasn't that good. So maybe let it grow out. And I know you're looking at me and you're saying, Brian, get better clothes. And I agree. I'm wearing an off-brand Lost Boys t-shirt that's one size too small. I probably should update the wardrobe, but I'm not rushing out to Herberger's quite yet. And none of us should be going to a Kenny Chesney concert anytime soon. If you really need to, he will tour again. He will be back next year. Oh, Kenny Chesney will be with us forever. He is the country music Nosferatu. The point is, I don't want to be doing more of these videos about you in 6 months because we had another spike. I want to finish doing these because I want quarantine to be over, but quarantine is only going to be done if we stay put a little bit longer rather than if we all get out and start doing kumbaya hugs with each other and spread this around more, and we have to do this all over again. And then I gotta find more guests, and I don't have that many guests. But speaking of guests, this is the final wrap up. Next video on this series is gonna be very serious. Heavy topic, life and death stuff that is still going on. Please join me for it. I think it's interesting. I think it's fascinating. It's not funny and it's not lighthearted, but it is something that is worth our time and our engagement. That's all I have to say for now. Thanks for joining me in this non-interview Toothpickings webcast. Talk to you soon. Stay safe.